My name is Daniel. I am the head of integrations here at Unlimit Crypto. And I'm giving this presentation right now. It's a pleasure to have you guys. So, Unlimit. What is Unlimit? So, Unlimit.com started in 2009, started as a payments company. So, we're actually a team of 500 people. So, we're actually one of the few enterprise-size companies really at any of these hackathons. So, started in 2009 as a payments company. They got into banking as a service. A lot of the main business actually comes from working with, different e-com websites. Like you have like Telegram, like InDriver, which is like the second biggest app behind Uber in like LatAm. So our parent company powers a lot of these traditional payments companies, or it's a traditional payments company that powers a lot of different companies around the world. So we have, we have thousands of payment methods that can be used. We have multi-currency IBAN accounts facilitating international transfers, card transfers. We have card issuing, so we can actually issue cards. We have a BaaS, a banking as a service suite, and I am part of the Unlimit Crypto team, which started around last year, and our team consists of like 25, 30 people. So, Unlimit, right? So we are an on and off ramp. So Unlimit Crypto, we have an on and off ramp widget that users can use various payment methods that we have already established from the parent company, and you can essentially on ramp into crypto, right? So the question is, why? Like, why do we need another on and off ramp, right? We have a few died last cycle, but we still have a decent number. So the question is why, right? So I have to in order for this to make sense, I'm going to take you through the progression of historically what on and off ramps were, right? So from the beginning, you had different companies, right? You had exchanges. That's really was the first way you could really on ramp was, so you have your Coinbases, your Krakens, your Bitstamps. They were one of the first people to allow you to ramp. And then from there, you had the introduction of various third-party integrations, which is the likes of MoonPay, Transact, Simplex. I actually worked at a company before this called Wire, which was like the biggest on-off ramp in the game at the time. And this progression, it was essentially a website, which was the exchanges, and then years later, now using these widgets, any company can integrate on and off ramps into their own app, creating a better user experience. But then the question is, how are they different, right? Really, the only way to differentiate between any of these on and off ramps up until now, up until Unlimit came about, was this on-ramp has, more cryptocurrencies you can choose from. This one has different payment methods you can choose from. Fees, right? So it's hard to differentiate in this game. There's only a few limited things that allow you to really be differentiated. So on the same note, differentiation. In order to understand how we're different and why, in my opinion, we're the superior on and off ramp in the game at the present moment, you have to understand how payments work. When you swipe your card at a store, or in this case, in our on-ramp payment gateway, what happens with your money? Where does it get routed to? Where do the fees come from? Why does any of this happen? How does any of this happen? So let's start off, right? You as the cardholder use a card given by your bank, which is known as the issuer, and the issuers are oftentimes called principal members, but I'll get into that later. So then you use your card. The store accepts your card payment through a point-of-sale system, but in the case of us, it's going to be a payment gateway, but it's the same concept. And the store has a bank relationship with an acquirer, and the acquirer ensures they can accept card payments, right? The point-of-sale system or the payment gateway connects to a processor. You have different players like FIS or Square, and the processor's role remains as the mediator to ensure a smooth conversation between the store, the network, and your bank. From there, the processor informs the acquirer about the transaction details. The acquirer at that point facilitates the transaction by connecting with the network, for example, Visa or MasterCard, and asks if the card is valid and has enough funds. Visa then speaks to the bank that issued your card, which is the issuer, And then the issuer checks if there's enough money and sends back a message, either approving or declining the transaction. The processor transmits this message back to the store system. If it's approved, the money eventually transfers from your bank to the store's bank. As you see, it's kind of complex. There's a lot of players in the game. You have multiple companies from the point you swipe to the point the actual transaction is finalized. There are multiple companies touching your funds and moving money around, communicating with different networks. And that's traditionally how it works. So then the question is, okay, how are we different? So that leads me to my next point, which is what I stated earlier. Unlimit started as a payments company. We are a banking as a service. We have an EMI, which is an electronic money institution. We are able to issue cards. As I talked about earlier, we're a principal member of Visa and MasterCard, meaning we have the ability to issue cards. The other people who are principal members are the likes of JP Morgan, major banks. So a lot of the major banks have the same ability as we do. So what does this mean? So your traditional on-ramps, all they are is they're just gluing together a bunch of APIs. They don't really own any part of the stack. So what that means is they're just gluing together a bunch of third parties. Their fees along the way, every step of the way. Not only fees, but you're exposed to FX spreads. So essentially, because of all of these things, you're not getting the best rates. That's why if you use a traditional widget, you put in a $100 order, it says, okay, here's $91. So you're getting the fee is insane. It's like a 10% fee right now, which is kind of absurd. So how are we different? Unlimit is the acquirer. We are the processor. We essentially own the entire payment stack, meaning the likes of MoonPay, Transact, right, Ramp, all these other players. When you make that purchase, they're routing your order to the likes of Checkout.com, who's an acquirer, WorldPay, who's an acquirer, different processors. So they don't own the stack. They're letting other people do it, which means everyone's taking fees along the way. So by the time the transaction is finalized, boom, 10% is gone. With us, on the other hand, we own the full stack. Therefore, we can essentially minimize the costs more than anyone else by a significant amount. So for example, go to onramper.com. They're an on-ramp aggregator. Really, 90% of the quotes we're winning right now because of this reason, because we own the stack. So then the next slide. So essentially we're a global company. So we're based in actually London and Cyprus. And when this company started in 2009, as I said earlier, it was based in Europe. So we're very specialized in Europe, LATAM, and APAC. And traditionally, the likes of the major on-ramps, they're really focused, a lot of them are based in the US. And while they do have, various payment methods globally, like SEPA or like SPAY, they don't have very localized payment methods, right? So in the on-ramp game right now, you can use either the major ones or you can use other on-ramp providers that are smaller, but they provide you with a very localized payment method. So for example, in Mexico, bodegas are actually huge. So in Mexico, we can actually allow the users to go to a Walmart, pay with cash, and we give them crypto. That only exists there's a few very small on-ramps that have these localized payment methods, but they don't have anything else. So there's no on-ramp currently except us that allows users to have all the major payment methods also, as well as the very local payment methods. And Walmart is one example, but in Mexico or Brazil or in Asia, really it's, we have hundreds of different localized ways you can go about to stores, do cash vouchers. There's a bunch of ways you could essentially on-ramp into crypto, which didn't exist before. And this all came about because this company made in 2009 took their stack. They realized, hey, we have this crazy stack no one else has. Let's actually integrate crypto into it. So unlike every other company that's in this on-ramp, off-ramp game, they all started as crypto companies. We started as a payments and banking company and realized, hey, we can outcompete everyone here because we were essentially didn't start as a crypto company. So with that being said, this essentially leads me, everything I just said leads to this slide, right? So what is the next generation of on and off ramps, right? As I said before, I actually worked at Wire. They unfortunately went out of business, but each of them came in with very incremental improvements, very small incremental improvements, right? So for example, you had Simplex. They were actually like one of the first, they were the first on-ramp widget, essentially, that could integrate into other people's software. And they came about, and they're really good at cracking down and making sure, like, hey, like fraudulent orders, we're gonna crack down on that, right? Then you had the likes of Wire come in, right? They realized, hey, Simplex has this widget, we could do that too, but let's actually create a white label APIs. Let's actually take all the functionality within this widget and create APIs so any developer can make anything with it. And unfortunately, up to today, Wire was the only one who had that. No one else has that. Even we don't have the APIs yet, but you had other people like Prime Trust, right? They actually went out of business. MoonPay actually focused purely on the widget and made incremental improvements. Sardine was the one, they actually were a fraud company. So they actually were really good at taking the data they had from all of these orders that were getting blocked, and they had a really good fraud engine. They realized, hey, we could take this engine, plug it into crypto. So essentially very, very small improvements to the user experience. But for us, we essentially own the hardest part. Essentially, this on and off ramp game is not a technology game, right? It's purely regulation, who owns licenses, who has connections, who can work in this country, who can work in that country. That's really the blocker. It's not the technology. The technology, anyone here can really make. It's essentially shaking hands and getting regulated and getting the stamp that, okay, I can operate here, I can have this payment method, I can do this. That's the hard part. And that essentially is what creates the fee. That's essentially the end user who gets the most crypto. That's what it's relying upon. But no other players in the game own the stack, right? As I said earlier. So Gen 2 was incremental improvements. In my opinion, Gen 3, which is Unlimit Crypto, we own the stack. Your fees are lower. You're exposed to less third-party risk. You can work with us directly, right? So, for example, at any of these, like Wire, for example, right? Because we didn't own the stack, when you got an end user didn't get their crypto or something went wrong in the payment, and we didn't own it, so we had to reach out to checkout.com or WorldPay or this person, and it took them a week to give us an answer. That's not cool. But for us, since we own the stack, I just go directly to my team. We figure it out in 10 seconds. So the entire experience is just significantly better because we own the full stack of the payment layer. So what does this mean, right? So I explained to you why this matters. And I think explaining to you why this matters is very important because there's all these on-ramps, but like what's the difference? Fundamentally, this is the difference. So for the sake of this hackathon, we are going to be using account abstraction with our on-ramps. So you as a developer, figure out interesting ways to take ERC-4337 account abstraction, combine that with our on-ramp, and create some novel experiences that don't exist currently. This picture is showing a bunch of cowboys looking at this chest because no one really has made the killer dApp that doesn't exist yet, right? Everyone's building it right now, and it's the race to build the killer dApp that wins the market. So we have an infrastructure, but there's no really good at all consumer apps that take full advantage of all the functionalities that AA offers. So what is account abstraction? So what is account abstraction? Let me get to this slide real quick. So conventionally, your MetaMask or the crypto wallets you've had before up to this point, they're called externally owned accounts. And they have their own validation logic hard-coded into the blockchain protocol itself. For example, Ethereum has specific rules, like the gas fees must be paid in ETH, nonces must be sequential, very specific rules that can't be changed. And in contrast, account abstraction wallets Right, like account abstraction is not a brand new concept. It's been around for years now, in theory, but ERC 4.3 through 7, creating a standardized version of it, that's really the new thing. But the actual functionalities has always been around as smart contract wallets, right? Smart contract wallets can program their own custom validation logic via smart contracts. So for example, you could have rules like require two-factor authentication in standard transactions, batch your transactions, pay gas in whatever coin or token you want. And if developers publish a new standard for the smart contract, users can update the logic for their smart contract wallets by pointing to the contract. So essentially, super customizable. And not only that, but it's a smart contract. In theory, your wallet now can become a dApp. No longer do you need to go to Uniswap, to some NFT marketplace. You can essentially just code that within the wallet itself. So to the point where you open your wallet, you have Uniswap, you have everything within there. So that's a thing right there. And so I said that. So here's some interesting features from account abstraction. You have the ability to sponsor gas, the ability to batch transactions, the ability to have session keys. Users can authorize temporary keys with specific permissions to do X function that is predefined. You have social recovery. So if you lose your keys, you can actually have a recovery, a guardian as its name, to help you recover the wallet. As I said, upgradable validation rules. You can pay in gas and other tokens and coins. And in my opinion, the most interesting thing is the ability to add plugins. And these plugins are essentially code within your wallet that allows the user to do really anything now. I mean, any literally smart contract code can be plugged into your wallet to allow for XYZ features that couldn't have been possible before. So here are some concepts that are now possible with account abstraction. So you can schedule future transactions like subscriptions. Use it where if you're trading, if you're about to be liquidated, you create a rule saying, hey, if the price hits X point, send crypto to this wallet to fund the account. When games release NFTs, your wallet can be programmed to automatically purchase it. So essentially, creating automation, right? Like for end users who heard about staking, but they just heard about crypto, they want to go to Curve, they want to stake. It's kind of insane. It's really hard to do for a new user to go through all that. Theoretically, now with this, you can essentially allow an end user to on-ramp into a wallet. Once the crypto lands in this wallet, your logic and smart contracts can say, hey, take the crypto, go to Curve, do X, Y, and Z, stake. When after a week or two or whatever time frame, unstake, send it back. Essentially, that could be written in the wallet itself now. So users don't even need to know what Curve or any of these websites are. They can just on-ramp into a wallet that's abstracted away, they don't worry about it, and they get the benefits from essentially doing this. So what does this mean? It's a question. Let's go back. So what does this mean? Essentially, end users who are new, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys are crypto native, and you've been playing in the game, going here, going to this dApp, experimenting around. It's hard, right? For a new user who has no idea what crypto is, they're not going to do that. They can't do that. They barely know how to use a wallet. So how do you expect them to stake? How do you expect them to do X, Y, and Z? They can't. It's not a real expectation you can have for them. So now, all of the functions and features and things crypto natives have been doing that are amazing and make crypto fun and cool and everything and solve all the problems that crypto is trying to solve, end users who have never touched crypto can now do that. You guys can create the experience that simplifies it to the point where they don't even need to know anything happening. They can just on-ramp and boom, they have exactly what they want. I'll get to the questions at the very end. So, 1 minute? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were using it. That's good. Okay, so after this, we have a Telegram channel. We have a table over there. You can come by our table. I have this demo, which actually we use ZeroDev, but you guys can use any account abstraction integration you want. And this is a full dApp that actually works. So if I go here, this is what our dApp looks like, right? So it has actually the wallet. It has everything integrated. You can clone this, and you can make whatever you want out of it. Here is our widget. It's in Spanish right now because it's a param. So we have different variations of how you can go about it. We have APIs. So the idea is use our on-ramp, combine it with an account abstraction wallet, and essentially do something novel within the Web3 space that has been conventionally easy to do for crypto natives, but very difficult for people who have no idea what any of this stuff is. So with that being said, we have our API docs. Here's my Telegram. Reach out to me. Come join our hackathon. Let's have a good time. Done. Nice. Cool.